This will be the second part of a series of videos I'm going to do about building your own tools to assist you with your rod building. The first video I did showed how to make a mark transfer guide, and it can also be used to find the center of your blank. And you can use that tool in conjunction with the one I'm going to show you now. This is a height marking tool, and it's really easy to make. Let me show you how I put this together real quick. Here you can see all the parts that I used to make this, and it's just some scrap wood I had. The only thing I did was I turned the bottom of the cylinder that's made out of maple. I turned that on the lathe just to make sure that it was set flat. If you start with something that's relatively flat, you don't have to worry about that so much. I just did that on this because I could and I wanted to do that. But if you start with something reasonably flat to where it won't rock back and forth, you'll be fine. And you'll use that for the base. And I just took a piece of scrap pine. The way Sharpies are made is that they're tapered. So I drilled a hole in that pine for the Sharpie to slide into. The bottom end of it's smaller in diameter, and the further up the pin you go, the larger the diameter gets. So I drilled that hole to where the Sharpie would seat itself in the hole and hold itself tight. If you're using something to mark with that is not tapered like that, you'd want to put some kind of a screw through that hole in order to screw it into your marking tool to keep it from moving on you. And to finish the build up, I just put a piece of threaded rod in that base, and I drilled a hole through that and put the threaded rod in there. And I did not glue it or anything in there. I actually threaded the wood because it's maple. It's really hard. It should hold pretty good in there. If you're using a softer wood or something else, you might want to epoxy the threaded rod in there. And then you'll just need a couple of wing nuts and some washers to help distribute some of the load as you clamp down on the block of wood that will hold the Sharpie. The block of wood that holds the Sharpie has a hole going the other direction to go over the threaded rod. That way you can adjust this up and down by moving the wing nuts up and down and tightening it up on the block to hold it steady. So it's really easy to make. All these videos in this series will come to a point where you'll see why I came up with all these different tools and how I use them together. A lot of reel seats have a flat side on them. If yours doesn't, this won't work for you. But if you do have a flat side on your reel seat, here's a real easy way that you can mark your 0 position and your 180 degree position. To help me do this, I'm just going to be using a standard speed square. These are relatively inexpensive. You can usually pick them up for less than $5 for one of the plastic ones at most of the big box home improvement type stores. Probably Walmart has them in places like that too. They're real easy to find, and the plastic one's plenty accurate for what we're going to be doing here. So in order to find your 0 position on the reel seat, as long as your work surface is reasonably flat and level, you can use the work surface and the speed square and the flat side of your reel seat together in order to find your 0 position. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is just set the speed square flat against the table and move it over to the reel seat and move that reel seat back and forth till I feel the flat of the reel seat setting flat against the speed square. Now that I've established my 0 position is 90 degrees to the table, I can take the speed square over to my rod blank where I want to mark my 0 position. And from here, we can just kind of eyeball the center of the rod blank in that area and make a mark on the speed square. I'm just using a pencil here. If you needed to, you could put a piece of tape over the speed square and use a permanent marker or something with a finer point. But for what I'm doing, just as a demonstration, the pencil is going to work just fine. So I'm just going to mark directly on the square itself. And now I have a reference point for my center line of the rod blank in this area at my 0 position. So now I'm just going to take the marker stand that I made and bring it to the speed square and line up my marker with the mark that I made on the speed square. And that can take a little bit of time. I've come up with a better idea for making these, but this will get you in the ballpark, and it's a lot easier to make than the one that I might build later for myself. Basically, I think I can make it into a cam type of a setup where it'll be easier to line it up. But this will work just fine too. It's just a little more fiddly than the other idea I had to get it to line up just right. But once you have it set, you can come over to your rod blank now and mark your 0 position. and that should be in line with the flat of the real seat. Now to mark the 180 degree position, if you'll move the speed square to the other side of the rod and position the flat of the real seat on the opposite side, now you can mark your 180 degree position on the front side, on the opposite side of where the speed square is. And now you've got a reference mark for your 0 position and your 180 degree position, which would be halfway around the rod. Now the tool in the previous video, the blank center marking and mark transfer tool, will come in handy in order to transfer your marks further down the rod where there's a taper. That way you don't have to realign your stand and your marker tool in order to find the center. You can just use your transfer tool in order to mark the opposite end of the wrap that you're going to put down if you're doing a decorative wrap or something like that. And you'll think of other uses too for this tool, but this is just one I want to show you real quick. And if it looks like something that would be handy for you to use, go ahead and make yourself one. It doesn't take much time. I just made it out of scraps that I had laying around. It doesn't have to be overly complicated in order to be effective. So that's all I've got for this second part of this little series I'm putting together. Again, all these tools will come together and be used as a marking system further down the road as I do these next videos. I'm either going to do 1 or 2 more videos. I haven't decided if I want to break it up or not. I may break it up into 2 videos. I might just do 1. But all this will come together and you'll see a really neat and easy to make system for marking locations on your rod for doing different things. If you want to mark guide positions, or if you want to mark reference points for decorative wraps or anything like that, these tools will really be handy for all that sort of setup and layout of all these different things. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. I really appreciate that. And likes, comments, all that stuff is always appreciated. I'll talk to y'all later.